and welcome to Pigskin Report podcast number 79. My name is Paul. To my right is the star of the show, Burt. Burt, why don't you introduce our special guest? I think everybody knows him.
I think everybody does. Coach Dave Wannstedt, head coach of the Bears, head coach of the Miami Dolphins, head coach of University of Pittsburgh, and now NFL Fox Kickoff Sunday, right?
A little bit of Kickoff Sunday, a lot of Bears now with Big Ten Network. The Score, my resume reads like a guy who can't hold a job. Okay, it looks like somebody cannot hold a job.
Except that you've held so many, Coach. Can I ask an X and O's question just to get this thing started?
Absolutely. Because
you've coached at every level and been successful at every level, and now do the TV thing at every level. Does the game evolve so much that even if you're out of it for just a little bit as an analyst, does it lap you, or are you able to stay current with all the trends schematically on both sides of the ball?
No, you know what? This is a perfect situation for me because when I'm doing Big Ten football, for example, I do TV with them. I'm talking to coaches during the week. I still talk with Jim Harbaugh. I went up and spent a couple of days up at Minnesota with PJ Fleck. So I make the tour. Brett Bielema down in Illinois. So I'm staying abreast of that. And then the same thing with the NFL guy. I mean, I do shows here with Lance Briggs and those guys. I do a show, Pro Football Weekly, with Dan Hampton. So I'm doing the Bears games now, actually more than the Fox stuff. I do everything here at NBC. And so it gives me a chance. I get up to training camp. To answer your question, the football stuff, I'm definitely up to speed on. The biggest thing you got to keep track of is the rule changes. That's what's so foreign to me. I mean, as Burt knows, we were full pads till maybe Thanksgiving, and we were contact every day and on and on and on. And now the rule changes on and off the field in college and the NFL. That's the biggest adjustment that I got to make.
You know, you bring up a good point, because I have to ask you this. We're both Pittsburgh. How come I never got recruited from Miami when you were there? Were you at USC then?
I was at, what was your last year of high school?
85.
Yeah, I was at USC, and I was at USC. We went to the Rose Bowl that year, and I left 86, I guess it was, and I went to Miami. Whenever Jimmy got the University of Miami job, I went back to Miami with him. So, you know what? That was a big mistake. We should have recruited you. We would have, I don't know. We couldn't have done anything. What were we going to do? You're a first-round draft pick, top 10 pick, All-American. We couldn't have done anything with you, please.
You could have paid my dad, and you would have got me. You would have got me. So bring a suitcase of money and a bottle of scotch, and you would have had me right away. My dad.
Well, back in those days at Miami, we were doing a lot of that.
Well, you guys bring it up. It's an interesting conversation between 85 and 2022 now. The recruiting game has changed a great deal. Has it not?
Oh, God. I mean, absolutely. It's changed since I was at Pitt. I mean, even when I was at Pitt, it was a little bit of Texan, and I went out the first year or two when I went back to college, I was on the road. In fact, they changed that rule because of me. I was on the road 24. You could spring recruit in the month of May. So you had your 30, 31 days right there. And I was on the road like 26 of them. I hit every school in the state of Pennsylvania. And then we recruited like a 6-hour drive from the city of Pittsburgh. That's where we were going to get our players from. I was on the road the entire month. And then they changed that rule. And they kept, so it's so much different now. Now you can give them things. I remember I was scared to death. LaShawn McCoy took the offensive lineman out for dinner one night, and the general manager of a Red Lobster there in Pittsburgh, down there on the south side part. The general manager was a buddy of mine. He called me and he says, "Coach, I don't know what to tell you, but Shady had all the guys down here, and he picked up the tab. It was like $250, no alcohol, just food." And he said, I just want to let you know. And I was scared. I said, well, just you don't tell anybody except me. This is between us. I was scared to death. Think about that. $250. Now these kids are going places for supposedly hundreds of thousands or million. I don't know what it is. I don't believe half of it.
Or that's what I was going to ask you. Do you believe this when you read about these NIL deals that some kid is getting $1 million to go play quarterback someplace?
Well, the kid from Pitt last year, Addison.
Yeah.
He went to
USC.
he wins the he goes to USC, right, Burt? And he was a Biletnikoff a winner. And the rumor was that he got $3 million or something. And when I talked to the people back at Pitt, I mean, they to this day he's still waiting on the money. So I don't know what they gave. I don't know what they gave him, how much, but I guarantee it wasn't $3 million.
So that's the question, because he just declared for the draft, so obviously he wasn't getting paid that much money. Now he wants the money. So I mean, going to Pitt, I still follow Pitt. I always follow Pitt, but you were probably the last coach there that Pitt was that had top 20 recruiting classes. I mean, now even they win the ACC, they're down in the 40s, 50s. You think it's wins, NIL, stability, the transfer portal? I mean, how do you recruit these days? Or do you just go to the portal and say, I'm going to get somebody else? I mean, it's killing high school kids.
Yeah, it's different. And Pitt is not one of those schools that has the resources to compete with the Oklahomas and the USCs as far as what they can give these players. I think the big thing with Pitt is, when I was there at least, having played there and from there, we were going to run an NFL system, and I will tell you what, the first recruiting trip I went on, I remember this. We were recruiting a kid, and it was us, Notre Dame. All the big schools were after this kid, and I wore my Pitt national championship ring. I was on the staff. I was a graduate assistant with Johnny Majors in '76. So I wore my national championship ring into this kid's home, and Charlie Weiss was the coach at Notre Dame, and he came in, and he was wearing his Patriots Super Bowl ring. And I walked out of there. I walked out there and I said to my assistant coach, I says, that's the end of this, wearing this Pitt ring. I'm wearing the next home visit, I'm getting my Super Bowl ring out. And I wore that every time. And that's kind of how it's changed. When Burt was recruited and when I was recruited, it was like, get the degree and hopefully you were going to be good enough and develop into a good enough player to play in the NFL. Now it's, can my son be a first-round draft pick? How quick, can you make him a first-round draft pick in 3 years so he can get out of there? That's really what it comes down to nowadays. And I was fortunate, I mean, whether it was Aaron Donald and obviously Sean McCoy and John, I mean, I had some really good players that I recruited, but it was all because we weren't giving that much. We were trying to stay within the rules. But we were going to give them an opportunity. The systems I ran was a pro system on defense, pro system on offense. Matt Cavanaugh, Matt, Burt, Matt was my offensive coordinator. So we were running a pro system there. That's what I was offering these kids, a quick way. And they all left. Shady left, Revis left, Aaron Donald. They all got, opportunities to go to the NFL early. And I'd like to think that they were NFL ready when they left Pitt.
Or, can I just, so then, Coach, are we presiding over the last days of the Roman Empire? Are we watching the NCAA crumble before us? I think we're all kind of in the same age group. I'm probably older than all you guys, but are the good old days over?
I think it's crumbling. I do. There's no direction now. Nobody pays any regard to it. You can do what you want, and you're not breaking the law. You're breaking NCAA rules. What are they? No one's really. It was the wild, wild west back in the day when I first got into coaching. And I went down to Oklahoma State, and it was, I went down there with Jimmy Johnson, and it was Oklahoma and Nebraska and Texas. It was the wild west. And then they got away from that. It tightened up, and now it's back again. And I don't know where it goes from here. I really don't. These conferences, teams are jumping. I mean, it's great.
So then, Coach, I'm kind of hogging this. So let me just ask the last follow-up to that then. So what's your advice to recruits? We come to San Diego. We're a hotbed for D1 talent. What's your talk to them? Speak to them directly, and how would you advise them to navigate this minefield?
Well, I got a grandson that's probably going to be a player and get recruited, and the thing that bothers me now, too, is this transfer portal. I mean, every kid that's not starting leaves now, and they don't get, it's tough on these kids. And let me make this point. So let's say that my grandson is a solid player, and he goes to Pitt, and all of a sudden Pitt brings in this kid from USC that didn't like it there, and he transfers in, and here's my grandson that's a sophomore, going to be a player as a junior, and now this 6-year senior comes in, and he's got to wait another year. I mean, so what does my grandson do? He transfers. He leaves and goes someplace else and plays. I mean, you got kids now that are transferring 3, 4, 5 times. I think it's a little bit absurd. I can see one time transfer play, but 3, 4 times. I mean, I think that's got to change.
So and that's a good point. I mean, you're from Baldwin, so when we were getting recruited, or it was pretty much regional, you went to Penn State, Pitt, Notre Dame, Ohio State, or Michigan. I mean, you didn't go anywhere else. And they had to treat you right because they had to come back to that area. And back then you had to sit out a year if you wanted to transfer. I got to Pitt, and you know how Pitt is in the winter. And then I had to sit with Buddy Morris that was our weight coach, who's a masochist. I mean, I would have left the first week if I didn't have any other thing. But hey, just put my name in the portal and I'll leave. So I think it's also gotten to the point where kids don't go through any adversity anymore. They don't have to. They don't have to build any character. They just get up and leave.
You are 100% right, Burt, and there's no doubt about that. I mean, the life skills that we all learned from playing football, being hurt, trying to come back, competing, the adversity, everything like that, losing, winning, how to deal with it. Those things, you got to be careful because they are slipping. There's no question about that. And Buddy Morris, he's still going. Burt,
Cardinals,
he was strength coach of the year last year. I mean, Buddy. I hired Buddy. He wasn't the strength coach when I first got there. My second year, I brought him in, and I went out. Did you guys run that hill in Shenley Park? I don't know.
Yeah, we did all that. I would have transferred.
Okay, so,
now I remember, I would have transferred before that.
But so the first workout, so I'm there, and I'm all excited about Buddy. And Friday, he would take the players to the hill. And it was just off campus a little bit, right there. So I get a cup of coffee, and they were over there at 6 in the morning or something. So I said, what time did they finish up? They said around 7. So about 6:30, 6:45, I pull up in the car, and all the coaches were over there. And it looks like, players are just lying face down all over this hillside. I said, oh, my God. This is – I get back in my car and drive back over to the office. And as soon as Buddy got over there, I says, Buddy, this is a bad scene. People driving by. There's guys all over the field throwing up. And, and Buddy said, well, Coach, do you want them tough? I said, I want them tough, but, God, do we got to do it out in the middle of campus? I mean,
what's even worse? You remember Armand Delavane?
Oh, yes.
I used to get money from him, not that anybody's in trouble now, not to buy anything, to pay Buddy so I wouldn't have to go through leg workouts and his leg days. So I would get my money from the alumni, and I'd hand it over to Buddy so I wouldn't have to go through his leg circuits and all this other stuff. That's how lazy I was.
Jeez.
That's why you didn't draft me or recruit me.
So if I could go back to the initial question, Coach, are you saying limit yourself to one transfer? Your advice to kids, to the seniors in high school right now that have to deal with this portal? I don't think they're getting that genie back in the bottle, Coach. I think that portal's here to stay.
And you know what? I went up to Minnesota, University of Minnesota, spent a couple of days, and they asked me to talk about this. And after being there, my message was this. You guys got to understand quality of life. I mean, you're treated good at a school. You're getting scholarship. They all get money on the side now. They're getting an education. They're playing top football. I said, just be careful. I mean, so many of these kids go into the portal, and I think only about 30 to 35% of them get placed. I mean, the majority of these kids either go somewhere and it doesn't work out, or they want to go where they think they have an opportunity and someone backs off of them. They all, the grass is greener theory. You got to be darn careful, in my opinion.
So appreciate the circumstance that if you get recruited, and fight it out. I think the best thing Burt ever said on this podcast, Coach, is what are your odds? Would you rather battle out with the 3 guys that are on campus or the 300 guys that are in the portal?
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I was talking to my grandson the other day, and I said, I said, you go to one of these big schools, and that the way it is now, that's going to happen. Because you go to a smaller level school where you're going to play and you're going to get an education, you'll get drafted out of there. You don't have to be at Michigan or Pitt to be drafted in the first round. So I don't know. I think you got to look at it from all different angles. I truly do.
So you and Jimmy Johnson were good friends. I mean, well documented, coached together, went through. Why do I get to see him out in the Keys with his shirt off and a beer fishing, and you're sitting in Chicago?
Because the shows that he was on out there, he was making a hell of a lot more money than I was. Okay, but no, you know what, Jimmy? I talked to Jimmy. I talked last week. I mean, we still are very close, and Jimmy's a different guy. He walked away from the Cowboys. We were out on his boat. He just bought this property down there in the Keys, and I was at the Bears, and he was at the Cowboys, and it was after the second Super Bowl. And, he said to me, he says, Dave, I think I've had enough of this. This was 5 years, guys, being a head coach in the NFL. That's it. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, my boat's paid for. My house is paid for. He says, I think everything is about quality of life. He says, I've got enough money now, and he didn't have much. He says, but I want to fish. I want to, that's what I want to do in my life. I'm not interested in touring the world and doing all this stuff. And he walked away, and could have coached. And people have 5 years later, I forget where I was coaching at, and he called me. He says, hey, I can make you a hell of a lot more money than you're making as a head coach. Maybe when I was at Pitt. Somebody had called up, NFL team, I won't say who, and offered him the whole package, back then for $7-8 million a year. And so he's had a lot of opportunities to make a lot of money, but that's the money's never been part of the deal with Jimmy. Very, very unique that way.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, because I still hear you say the Bears, and my wife's from Chicago, and she's wanted me to grow a mustache like yours for a long time. Wannstedt, I think we used to call it on social media.
Yeah.
What is it like? I mean, that has to be, how do you follow up? Because you got to follow up Ditka. I mean, it's Chicago, which is like following Michael Jordan or Walter Payton.
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
it's just, how hard is that?
It was real, real hard. And, two things happened, and you'll appreciate this, Burt. When I got here, first of all, let me take it back. Mike's dad worked in the same steel mill in Pittsburgh that my dad worked at, on the other side of the river. He was Aliquippa. I was on the other side, south side. We both went to Pitt, obviously. When I was an assistant coach, even back at Miami, Mike would always, he was the big guy in the neighborhood growing up, older, obviously. But he would invite me back to his golf tournaments and I would go back. So we had a real friendship. And, when I did take the Bears job, like the second day on the job, he called me. We met at this little Italian restaurant in Highwood. And he says, bring a marker and bring a media guy. And Mike and I sat at the bar and we drank. And he went through every page and X'd them. Stay away from this one. This is good people. Stay away from this one. And he went through the entire organization with me. And, to this day, I saw him. I didn't see him I did see him like last June, because now he lives in Naples, and that's where my home is. When the NFL season's over, I head to Naples, Florida, and that's where Mike's lives down there. So I do see him down there usually once a year. That's about it. But it was tough. It was tough to get back to it. My first meeting, I had 14 players, and this would have been 93. I had 14 players that had played on the Bears 85-86 Super Bowl team. And the majority of these guys were done playing, but and Mike and I talked about this, but when these guys lay it on the line for you, I mean, I kept Steve McMichael for a year, Richard Dent, Mark Bortz played 3 or 4 years for me. Sean Gale played, Jimmy Morrissey played for me for a year too. My point is, I probably kept 8 of them, and they were really good. But then there was another 10 that I had to release, and now all of a sudden we had about 30 players on the team. And as you know, we only got 10 draft picks, and we let some players go. So it was a tough situation. We went to the play. In fact, it's still the last road playoff game that the Bears won. This is how tough it's been here. Is when I was the head coach. Think about that.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Well, how about are you optimistic now? It seems like you have the quarterback piece in place. It seems like you're going to have a ton of cap space. Seems like the new guy came in and said, okay, we're going to some tough medicine this first year, but it looks like you're going to be positioned that window is going to open up quite nicely under a quarterback under a rookie contract, right?
Yep, and I'm excited. I know Matt Eberflus. He's the new head coach. He's a defensive guy. And I'll tell you what, I've been campaigning on all these shows for years about giving defensive coaches an opportunity. You know, I mean, these guys kind of get the big picture. They understand the importance of running the ball, field position, a lot of things. You hire some of these young offensive coaches, all they want to do is try to score touchdowns. And I get that part of it, but there's more to the game than that. So I like what they're doing. I love the quarterback. And three of the guys, and I say this humbly, but I'm proud of it. When he hired these guys, I said, one thing I know about the Bears, I don't know how they're going to be throwing the ball, but the guys he's hired, I know they can run the ball because three of them work for me. Their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, is a Pittsburgh guy. He was on my staff. The running back coach, David Walker, Syracuse guy, he was on my staff at Pitt for 6 years when I was there. Andrew Janocko, the guy coaching the quarterbacks, was my backup quarterback for 4 years at Pitt. So I said, one thing I know, because I got fired a lot of times for just wanting to run the ball, obviously. But I says, these guys will run the ball. And I think right now they're first, second, or third in the league in rushing. I mean, they run the hell out of the ball.
But if you look at, I mean, for me, we had Jim McMahon on here a few months ago. You know Jim's personality, totally different. But kind of back then, you had those different personalities. We were making $300,000-$400,000 a year. You could control guys. Now these guys are coming and making $100 million. How do you control an atmosphere or a culture in a team anymore when you get somebody crazy like Jim or me or somebody else, and then you hand them Russell Wilson, $250 million? It destroys the culture. And how do you get it back at that point?
Yeah, the two things that motivate, I always thought, NFL players was number one, money, contracts, and number two, peer pressure. And the peer pressure will always be there. You can do that from a coach, but these contracts, you're 100% right. I mean, I just hope it doesn't get. I remember when I was coaching the Dolphins, I became good friends with Pat Riley. And I went down and spoke to the Bulls a few times, and I'm sorry, the Miami Heat. And he came up and he would be in my press box, 2-3 times a year. I'd go to games. He spoke to the team back and forth. So we became friends. And I was down there once, and he says, I'm taking like 17 guys to camp, okay, to start the season at the Miami Heat. And he said, I think 14 of these guys have guaranteed contracts. He says, Dave, this is tough coaching.
Yeah.
This is tough coaching. And that's the norm in basketball. I get that. You know what I mean? But that's the point. I mean, football, NFL has kind of held off on that as long as they can for the most part. But the numbers are so big now, Bert. I mean, it's crazy. Coaches, players. I mean, it's from when we were all in it. My first head coaching job with the Bears, I think I had 4 offers from 4 different NFL teams. And they were all around the same. And I think I signed for $375,000, 4-year deal.
Man.
That's where it was.
Yeah.
I had one player. I'll give you a stat because I looked at it. When I took the Bears job in '93, we had one player on our team making $1 million in '93. And it was Neil Anderson was the running back from Florida. You remember Neil?
Sure.
And but on that team, keep in mind, Hall of Fame, Richard Dent, The Fridge, Steve McMichael, Keith Van Horn. I mean, we had a lot of really, really good Pro Bowl players, and none of them were making $1 million a year.
That's the minimum wage now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's developmental.
That's the. So, Coach, hey, Burt brought up Russell Wilson, and we saw what's happened to the coach there. Can you take us through what that phone call is like, or what that moment's like when ownership calls and saying, "Hey, we're going in a different direction"? Is there a sense of relief, or is it, "Oh, come on, I just need one more day, or I need one more game"?
No, you know what? In that situation, wow. I mean, a half a year, it was, when you get it, it was such a downhill spiral that I don't know if he knew it. I was only really fired one time in my coaching career as a head coach, and that was when I was with the Bears. And you know what? The ownership was more than generous. I mean, our last year we went 7 and then we went 4, and we were going nowhere. We were struggling, So I really had no problem, and that's why I get all this work in Chicago. I mean, it didn't happen. We didn't get the job done. Okay, it did not happen. Forget about the reasons. But at Miami, it became, we were the 3rd winningest franchise. I averaged 10 wins a year for 4 years. And then that 5th year, Ricky Williams went on his little hiatus and a couple of things happened. And kind of got into a little bit of a dispute with the owner about playing some young kids. And halfway through the season, I said, this isn't going to work. You're the boss. So I basically walked. And then at Pitt, it was the craziest thing.
I was just going to ask you that, why you resigned from Pitt.
Well, the athletic director that hired me left and went to Arkansas after 2 years. And that was the only reason I took that job. One, because it was on my alma mater. And I turned them down the first time. I was trying to get Matt Cavanaugh the job. And then they came back and I said, okay, I'll try it. And this guy, we had a nice plan for what was going to happen. Don't you know, 2 years later, Arkansas triples his salary and gives him private planes to use, at the university down there. Pitt didn't, none of that stuff. So he leaves. So then they bring in this Steve Peterson guy, who had just got run out of Nebraska, and he comes in and he wants to change this and change that. And it was not going to work between the two of us, but we were co-champs my last year. We had a young football team. We won 9 games a year my last 3 years. We averaged 9 wins a year. I mean, that's as good as Pitt's done in 25 years. He came in and we won it, we were co-champs, and said that they offered me a job they wanted me to step down from being a coach, but they would give me a job as assistant AD for the rest of my life. And I said, you think I'm going to say I would be your worst enemy if I took that job and stayed here? What do you? So I said, you people don't realize it. So 2 days later, Chan Gailey hired me as assistant head coach, blah, blah, blah. I went to the Buffalo Bills, and I was making more money than I was making at Pitt and didn't have the headache. So, I mean, I was there because I wanted to be there, but that's what happened, So people.
So what, take us to what was Hackett feeling right today? Is he glad to be out of there, do you think, or is he embarrassed?
You know what? I said this on a show yesterday. These owners hire guys, and it happened here at Pitt, and I think the guy's a nice guy, Matt Nagy. He was a coach before Eberflus, who's there now. And Matt Nagy was the coordinator for 6 games at Kansas City with Andy Reid. And I was told the guy never called plays. And this guy, Hackett, he was the quarterback coach at Green Bay. He never put together a game plan. He never had his job on the line on a 4th and 1 and had to make a decision as a coordinator. He never did that. And he gets hired because he worked with Aaron Rodgers. And I just think that, some of these owners, they want to win the press conference. They want to win the press conference and walk up here and say, I got Aaron Rodgers MVP 2 years. This is the guy that coaches him. But, I kind of feel bad for Hackett because I think he got into a situation
over his head,
over his head. And
I try to tell people the same thing here. I mean, they hired McCoy from Denver because he had Peyton Manning. But if you're in the game, it's Peyton Manning. He's the offense coordinator. Mm-hmm. He's calling out every single play if you even let you make a play. But you think you're getting the offense coordinator. The offense coordinator is Peyton Manning. He's not Mike McCoy. So then it all goes downhill, and you're right. They don't know what they're calling. They didn't put the game plan together. I mean, if you go Tom Brady, Mahomes, they're winning because of those guys. It's not the offense coordinator that's so much. Well, maybe different in Kansas City, but
how about the Mike McDaniel, the kid, the guy that's coaching Dolphins now? I mean, he was seems like he has his.
Yeah, he's got his work cut out too. I mean, where did he come from?
Yeah, he came from the 49ers, and he was in charge of the run game out there. And I don't know. But it was the same thing. You're coming from the Niners, Super Bowl. He was there. He's got a great resume, smart guy. But, it used to be this, and this is how it's changed. You didn't even get an interview for a head job unless you were a coordinator that was on a playoff team and they went deep into the playoffs. And the owners used to tell me the reason was that they wanted to see your body of work. They wanted to see me in playoff games. They wanted to see me in Super Bowls. what type of game plan I put together. I'm making the decisions. You can evaluate kind of what you're getting. And nowadays it's changed, though, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Well, Coach, we're wrapping this up. We kept you longer than we wanted to this holiday season, but I was wondering, we do a high school football show. The Prep Pigskin Report's a big high school football show here in San Diego, and a lot of high school coaches are going to watch this. And I thought maybe we'd leave it with you giving advice to coaches, be it at the youth level or at the high school level. What's your word of advice for them if they got a 3-minute phone call with you?
I would tell them that, first of all, it's fantastic that they're into coaching because they are making a difference in some young kid's life. And you may not see what you're doing right now or get the feedback right now, but what you're doing, you are making a difference in their lives. But then I would say from a football standpoint, it really hasn't changed. Don't get hung up on these different offense. It still comes down to blocking, tackling, fundamentals. The guys that make the least bad plays win most of the games. It's not the guys that make the most great plays. If you really look at it, it's the teams that make the least amount of bad plays. That's still, in my mind, winning football. And the teams that win, that's what they do. You know who you guys got to get on your show. I was just out in San Diego last year. Norv Turner lives right there in Del Mar. Norv, his son Scott's the offense coordinator. His son's the offense coordinator at Washington. And I know Norv goes down to San Diego State, and he's good friends with Brady Hoke down there and stuff. But he's right there in San Diego. You guys if you need his number, Burt, I'll text it to you.
We'll follow up.
Wait. If Norv's helping with San Diego State's offense, we might want to talk to him.
Norv's a genius.
He is, but you've seen that offense?
Well, yeah, but it's not the Indian, it's the Arrow.
Yeah. He's and I said that. I know he's gone down to a couple practices, put it that way.
Yeah, no, I got you.
But he's right there. And if you need, you know what, when we hang up, do you have a pencil there, Burt?
Yeah, let us shut this down first, Coach, and we'll get it to you. Do it text-wise because I don't want this to go out to the world here. All right,
okay.
Coach.
Good point.
Thank you so much for your time. And, growing up watching you, it's an honor to finally get to chat with you, even though Burt had to be here.
Wow.
All right. Hey, Burt's the reason I got on here.
I know, and I love him dearly. He's my only friend.
I'll send you a message to that number, Coach. Thank you.
All right, this podcast is over.
Okay.
Turn off the machines, everybody.